Okay. I'll go ahead and start with the prayer, and then we'll get started.
Okay.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for being able to meet together as a class and to discuss principles that we have studied this week and to find ways to put them into our lives and to make them better. And we ask you that we may have a good lesson, that we may all feel thy spirit. And we say these things in Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Um, so what did you guys think of the Lance Armstrong case?
Well, it's kind of interesting just because the very first thing was asking, like, what is his legacy? And it was one of those things where I sat there and I was just like, well, I actually thought of it as like the difference in what his legacy could have been and now what it is because of the decisions he made. And like what it could have been was just this amazing, he had this foundation and the whole Live Strong campaign, and he was a cancer survivor, all these different things. And now, I mean, his legacy, people still know him for those things, but his real legacy is that he betrayed people and he's a cheater. And it's just so unfortunate how a decision like that can change that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of information on this subject just because I watched an interview he did on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Oh.
It was a 3-hour interview about this exact topic, and one of the things he talked about was well, first of all, like the first 17 places in the Tour de France were all cheating. Like you would have to go down 17 places to find someone who wasn't cheating, and that's all speculation too, because it could have been even further deeper than that. So like the whole industry was corrupt. And I think the paper does talk a little bit about that, how like it was teams of, the entire team was doping.
Absolutely.
And it was not just the US team, it was all of the teams.
Mm-hmm.
So from that perspective, like he still kind of, I mean, he even said in the paper, like I looked at it as evening the playing field.
Yeah.
And in some ways that was true. I don't know, but from the interview that I read, that I listened to, also, he just talks about how he got caught up in a really, really bad situation where he was so used to lying and defending himself that it started to become like a reality for him, and he really believed that he wasn't cheating when people would ask him.
Well, and that's what happens when you lie. Like if you lie enough, that's what you become to believe.
Yeah, so it was pretty crazy. So yeah. Anyway, just some insight.
No, I mean, that's one thing I was kind of getting from this is, you know what, it's pretty much everyone was sitting there doing it, which, granted, it doesn't make it okay, but it's the way that the teams operated. I didn't realize in a cycling team, like, that the team is basically there to push one guy forward.
Yeah.
That you have, that when they're all in the pentathlon or whatever it is, the team surrounds him and protects him, which is what the team did outside of the races too, is they surrounded him with the lies and the buffers going, no, he's not, no, he's not, no, he's not. And everyone owned up to it, saying no.
Right.
And I mean it's especially when you have...
Yeah, keep going.
What do you think?
Sorry, keep going.
Especially when you have somebody who ends up becoming the face of a cycling organization or the sport, it's really tough to try to go, no, this guy's really a dirty, rotten cheat. He's doing this, this, and this. Especially when it's, hey, guess what? So are the next 5 top teams.
Right. Exactly. And he says in his interview with Oprah, like she straight up asked him, like, do you think, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was like, could you have done what you've done without those aids? And he's like, no, it would have been impossible, kind of thing. And but the one thing I did notice about about his team members is there was 1 or 2 exceptions, but for the most part, none of them, even if they weren't on his team anymore, none of them said something until things came out. So it wasn't even like, trying it. At some point, everyone starts to live the lie, like we're talking about, and it just becomes their reality, and so it's not something they go out of their way to point out, you know.
Yeah, it's a crazy situation, right? Like,
Yeah.
from the team dynamic, because that's really what this, this class is about, is how to work with organizations and things like that. He was in a tough organizational situation too, because like was just mentioned, he was the team captain. He was the star of the team, if you will. And so he had certain expectations that he also couldn't say anything. Like even if he wanted to,
right?
Yeah, he couldn't say anything. His teammates couldn't say anything. And like you got to imagine, like what kind of people, like you have doctors, like high-end officials and doctors who all know what's going on, and they're all invested in this, and they're all willing to participate. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
like how like a good example of this situation is like a buddy of mine. He used to work in a plant down in Mexico in TJ, and his part of his job was to wine and dine environmentalists. That was his job. Environmentalists would show up to their dig site, and he was supposed to take them by the hand, give them Lakers tickets, take them out to eat, pay them off. That was just the cost of doing business, because what they were doing was wrong, but everyone within the business thought it was okay as long as you could get away with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's morally wrong, obviously.
Well, it's also like for a while down in Brazil, there's been buildings that the church has had done, or at least at some point, and this is from guys I knew, where it was, all right, well, your building's done, now where's the bride for us to make it okay? And the church is like, no, that's not how we do it. We're not going to give you a bride.
Yeah.
And it's just because, actually, we were starting to touch on the next portion here is the cost. I mean, and the cost of the program that they were running to dope, where they went through and there was one company that gave them bicycles.
Yeah, they were selling their sponsorship stuff in order to pay for it.
Oh my gosh.
Well, and that's one of those, it's, you go through, your sponsor gives you this stuff, and you sell it for cash, you never see it on books either. So you're not spending any outrageous amount of money on these particular people to do
it's money
these projects.
And I think there were, the monetary costs, but I also think there were costs to, all of the competitors emotionally and the physical costs that come with doping up and doing all these things and the things it does to your body. So I think on top of the monetary costs, there were also these mental, emotional, and like physical costs that came along with it as well.
Yeah, I agree. When you're involved in bad business like that, there's definitely an emotional cost to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's costs that we will never fully know, because it seems like there were chances for, even on the personal side, where there are decent relationships that you just destroyed.
And your physical body too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't know enough about this to know for sure, but I would imagine that taking steroids and other agents, performance enhancing drugs, are going to affect you long term. In fact, I do have a buddy of mine. Now, granted, he wasn't being observed by a doctor, but he used to do quite a bit of steroids because he just wanted to be really big, And he got to the point where once he stopped, his body stopped producing testosterone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so he had to go to the doctor at that point. Now he receives prescription testosterone, but he has to be on it for the rest of his life. Like he no longer has the choice. So I would imagine there's a lot of that with these guys too.
I'm sure, yeah.
I knew a couple guys who did the HGH stuff, and they actually did it. Like there's a program where you take it for like so many weeks, and then you're off of it, so that way your body kind of can recuperate a little bit. But
Oh,
they said that if you just keep on it, you'll destroy everything.
that's so sad.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my buddy who's doing the steroids, he was trying to get his hands on HGH, and I think the only way to really get a hold of good stuff without getting a prescription yourself is through AIDS patients, and AIDS patients will sell it. So
Really?
yeah,
Oh my gosh, I'm learning so much
Well,
about
they
this.
need to be able to pay for their treatments.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
so
Anyways.
Yeah, so we'll go back into the realm of our legalities here when we'll talk about some of the underhanded dealings that we've been a part of
Oh gosh.
or know of. I'm not admitting to anything. Take the fifth. Now, do we think that the other writers were too loyal to Armstrong or not loyal enough?
I actually don't know. This is obviously just my opinion based on how I felt while reading it. I don't necessarily know that any of them were loyal to Armstrong necessarily. Because a lot of them their relationships with him seemed to fall away or something seemed to happen to them, and they still didn't say anything until they were subpoenaed and stuff like that. So I don't know that it's necessarily loyalty to him, but I do think it might be loyalty to themselves and to like the sport or anything. But that's just kind of an obscure opinion I have about it.
yeah, I think that it seemed like Neil's the one who got caught, right? I mean, I think
He is the one who ultimately ended up taking the blame for it, because like it was saying in the end is that because he was the head,
They call him the
person.
ringleader of it.
Yeah, that he forced his teammates into this situation.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't feel like he forced them into it. I felt like just from my understanding of the whole situation and from what I read, it seemed like this was kind of the norm.
Right.
So like, you know, their coaches and everybody knew about it.
I don't know that he necessarily forced anyone. I did get the vibe reading it that that's how it was portrayed, but in reality, I don't know that he ever really forced anyone, but it does sound like he specifically worked with doctors to create programs for him and his teammates.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know that he was necessarily like this big ringleader and drug lord kind of person, but I do think he probably, as the team lead and team manager, managed that for them.
I think the best way to probably describe it is he established the culture and enforced it. Reinforced it. Just like with any manager, they can come in and, you know, either instill good habits or they can instill the bad ones. And depending on how they act is how it is enforced.
And maybe he didn't even instill it because it sounds like, again, it was something that came from the actual sport environment itself, but he did maintain it and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think just from this is my opinion is that if they made it to his team, they were most likely already doing drugs of some sort, because otherwise they wouldn't have gotten to the elite level to be on his team. This was the Postal Workers League, right, or something like that.
Yeah, USPS.
Yeah. This is your team's league.
Hey, that's one reason. Hey, you know what? That's why we're raising stamp prices again.
Because of Lance. Jerk.
Yeah, because we're still recuperating from his 2012 fallout.
Oh
no. Yeah, but so like I don't think anyone would have even made it to that the pinnacle of the sport. Because you know, like when you get to the top of any sport, whatever it is, all the top guys know each other. They just do, because they've seen each other.
Right,
they've more than likely been training the last 15, 20 years of their lives. They see each other all the time, you know, coming up in the sport. Anyway, so with that said, I don't feel like it was Lance. I mean, like I agree with what you guys are saying, that he obviously was supporting the habit, but I just don't think there was like, you're not competitive unless you're doing this. And so that was just kind of a given. Like everyone knew, everyone was doing it, and it became such a norm for the culture of the sport.
Yeah.
I don't think he can be blamed. And I don't think his people, like, they were all very, very tight-lipped. And then Lance actually was kind of one of the first guys to just be completely honest about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think he singularly can be blamed. That's for sure.
But I also think it wasn't at this time. This kind of started the whole conversation about doping in sports with the McGuire Sosa home run competition
Right.
and things like
Was that all the same time?
I don't know. It might be.
I think that was a couple years before, but it was still in that same kind of period where it was kind of a bigger deal. It was starting to come out more.
That a lot of these guys were even doing it because they felt the pressure to be able to perform, or their fans, their bodies couldn't sustain.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you know, the other thing about, and I think I feel like we keep getting, not that what we're talking about is not important, but I think we get away from like the whole aspect of a team. Like, so this is supposed to be how to manage teams better. Like, what are we taking away from this lesson? And one of the things that I think, like, the overwhelming, like, elephant in the room is, if your team is doing well, but they're doing something ethically wrong, illegal, morally wrong, whatever it is, that you have to, you know, the takeaway from this, you know, it's
responsibility.
It's kind of hard because like. First of all, Lance was able to do a lot of really great things.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, he couldn't have done it without the performance-enhancing drugs. So he's kind of between a rock and a hard place. Like, I don't know, because he would have never had the fame had he not been cheating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think.
But if everyone else is doing it, is it really cheating? You know, that's the other.
Well, no, and that's
going along with what a team is and everything. It's it was the culture that was established there. And at some point, you know, as teams and as we kind of go off into our own businesses and our own groups and everything like that, no matter what the culture is, if the culture is something that is not okay, is illegal, is against your values or something, then it is, you know, it is that person, no matter who that is, responsibility to say something, which eventually Lance did. So.
Yeah. So, you know, from that perspective, like, so like the question maybe would be, obviously he is responsible. The question would be, is maybe he could have helped to get this stuff out in the open sooner.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe, you know,
but here's the thing is, once you start living a lie like that, I mean, look at the fallout that happened. Is even if he stepped up and went, yeah, me and my entire team are dopers, and we've been doping for the last, 9 years, and everybody who's been on my team has doped. That now destroys how many other teams? Right. And how many other people are going to come out just as strong? How many organizations are going to come out just as strong saying, hey,
we're not part of that.
Happen.
But it kind of goes into, I don't know if you read the second reading with the Clayton named Christensen from the Harvard Business School. He said, I mean, you have to kind of make the decision, and he was saying about his fellow classmates, you have to make the decision early on that you're going to make the right choice, regardless of whether it costs you everything and whether it, I mean, even if no one else is going to suffer from it the way they should, like, I don't know, it's kind of our responsibility to make sure we have that choice in our head kind of already made.
Yeah.
You know, I can kind of relate to this, that statement. I had a recent, so I work with insurance, you know, I'm an insurance broker, and I have lots of clients that are business owners and, you know, whatever. So there's a situation where I'm like, I do what they call field underwriting for the insurance companies. So part of my responsibility is to be the eyes and the ears of the insurance company.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, they give me certain level of trust and responsibility. So I had a client who just recently bought a new car, and he went out and he totaled it. And he never told me to add that vehicle to his policy. He just didn't tell me. And now the claim is being denied. Like, he's not going to get covered because he didn't add it to his vehicle. Now, it was one of those situations where he traded in one car, got another car, and continued to pay coverage on the other car. So, you know, obviously he's a good guy. He didn't mean to
think of it. Yeah.
it wasn't like he was trying to deceive them. Like he didn't take one car off and then was like, I'm getting by without covering myself. You know, it's just simply a mistake. And that mistake is costing him like 45 grand, the full value of this car. Now, I could have lied to the insurance carrier and said, "Oh yeah, he let me know. I just forgot to make the change," and then he would have been covered. And he would have been happy.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah. I would have had to lie,
right?
And I could have easily, and the carrier wouldn't even question me. And so the question is
so hard because do I lie to protect these people? Do I lie to help these people? Like, what's the right? You know, yeah.
Right. I mean, I think we all know what's right.
Right.
But the question is like, well, who do I want to favor in this situation? The client who made a mistake, or the big insurance company that's gotten money, you know, and made tons of money from him over the years,
and I will never even look twice at it.
Yeah, and so that, you know, that's one of those situations where you know, it's tempting to lie for the client because it's almost kind of like nobody's really going to get hurt, and I look good, the client looks good, and I would have actually probably done that 10 years ago. It wouldn't have been I wouldn't even thought about it. I would have just done it.
Right.
But it's just kind of not where I'm at today. It's not who I am anymore. It's because it matters more to me, to be honest. And the client told me he's going to take all of his business and leave. And it's, you know, it's a significant account. It sucks.
Which sucks. Yeah. Ugh, man.
Yeah. But I'm losing it because I'm doing the right thing. So, you know, that's okay. I mean, I'm okay with it. But like, you know, that story that you're talking about is how do we want to be, you know, what is the true judgment of who we are, you know?
Right. Yeah. Like as much as it sucks now, like, it's something when the judgment time comes, you won't have that kind of, I don't want to say red mark on your ledger, but you won't have to answer for that because you'll have done the right thing.
Right. Yeah. And you know, and I'm hoping that once the client calms down, that he'll come around and be like, you know, you did nothing wrong. It's not your fault. And but I also can't tell him that because he's his own man, you know.
Exactly.
All right. Unfortunately, being in customer service, we all know how often somebody coming down and realizing, oh, you know what? You did absolutely nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep spending money. No. They just double down at that point and go.
Yeah. So anyway, but I thought that was a really good scenario of exactly kind of what you're talking about. And I feel it's a real life thing and it's hard. So yeah. Anyway.
Right. Which I think that one, have we ever had a leader who's done something similar to kind of the Lance Armstrong thing where it's the decision they're making isn't necessarily right?
I don't have an example, but I think that was a good example of you made the right choice, but that was a good reference into that.
Well, I have one more that's kind of an interesting one. I'll try to keep it brief, but I had so this was my bishop up until about 3 months ago. He moved away because of this situation that happened, but he was a school psychologist, and he got hired to be the director of special education at a new school, which was it was a pay raise and it was a position increase. So he was now an administrator. Basically, he's like second in charge at a school. So like this was kind of his dream job, if you will. And so he finally got it. And as he started working there, he was the principal of the school started telling him to operate in a certain way that he didn't feel comfortable doing. And so he was objecting, and the principal basically, just to make a long story short, the principal was cussing at him. He was really rude to him, and he started attacking him as a person, telling him, that he had to do it this way. And I guess he was kind of taking it for the first few days. And then eventually he kind of came to his, he kind of started he started saying, look, this is just not right. And he pushed back on the principal.
Yeah.
And the principal actually started recoiling and saying, look, we'll do whatever you want. I'll even pay you. Like, because he started realizing that this guy who was going to stand up and do the right thing actually could jeopardize his position as the principal. He could get fired. And my bishop was like, no, I don't want to get paid. I don't even want to get paid for the 2 weeks I did work for you. Keep all your money. I don't want to work here because what you're trying to do is unethical. he was basically trying to he was basically trying to put the students the teacher was listening to the parents on how to deal with the students versus having the administrative have a board hearing and basically go through all the proper channels just so that people would review his school strongly. That was the whole thing. It was all PR.
Oh,
It was,
well,
it
good
was
for
100.
him for even though it was like his dream job, like fighting that, you know.
Yeah, he left it and then he moved. He couldn't afford to live here in San Diego anymore after that. Yeah, I was really because he tried to go back to his old job that he left for that one, and they had already filled the position.
Oh,
So yeah, he ended up having to move away, and it's okay. It's I think it was okay in the end because, but that was a situation where the boss was like, "You are going to do this thing," and he actually even went along with it for a couple of days, until I guess he just kept pushing it further and further, and he just couldn't do it anymore.
good for him.
Yeah, but I think that's a perfect situation of somebody doing the wrong thing, and like I said, it's hard to go against it. You know, that's your boss.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's never easy.
Yeah, and now that I'm the boss of my own company, I try to run it in such a way that I never give my employees that. I never want to put my employees in that situation where they have to do the wrong thing.
Right, right.
So that's yeah. I don't know. That's a good one.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think I've had any of those situations where I mean, it's just the post office just so full of crappy managers that I mean,
but there's rules and safeguards, hopefully.
Hopefully.
no, it's whatever whoever decides to be in charge that week is coming up with.
Beautiful.
I mean, I think we've had 3 acting district managers, 2 district managers in the last 3 years.
Wow.
And in the last 5 years, I've had 4 postmasters and 3 OICs, officers in charge who are not, they just don't want the title of postmaster.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think yeah. Okay. What was the next one?
I was going to go, I think kind of we've covered, oh, hold on, the last one. That's about the only one we haven't covered yet. How will you personally measure your life? How will you measure success?
Yeah, that's a really good question. When I read that article, I first read that article last semester in a class that I took. And that article actually kind of touched me a lot because it really made me think, like, how do I want to measure my life, and what do you hold your life against? Like, what kind of standard, like
Yeah.
And I don't know, like what I've come up with to now is and this is a like I want to say this is kind of a luxury and a blessing that I've received, but so it's not like I'm trying to sound arrogant here, but like financially, I don't have to worry anymore. I run a company; it's fairly successful. And I also live very modestly. But with that, I have a lot more freedom. It gives me the freedom to, like, I don't have to worry about paying my bills. So with that advantage, I can worry about things that matter to me, like spending time with my kids, working out, going to school, being a good husband, being a good father, and so like, because of I just feel like that's how I'm measuring my life right now is, how physically capable am I? How spiritual am I? How good are my kids doing? Like all of those things are kind of, I use those and then relationships as well. Like, do I have good friendships? Have I been able to sustain friendships? Have I been able to help other people, fulfill callings? Like, those are all things that I measure my life at now. Like, I don't have, I know a lot of people would be like, well, how much money do I make? That's the measurement of my life. And that's just not where I'm at today. And I'm grateful for that part, of just not having to, but I know there's a lot of people who would look and say, look, I just want to pay my bills. And I don't know what that would feel like, but I know that that's a pressing matter to some, that's all they can think about.
I mean, everything you said is exactly how I would want to measure my life and measure my success, because I yes, the money is great and it helps to, pay bills and it helps to take care of things like that. But in the end, it's really, I mean, nothing I can buy with money is going to come with me when I die, but all my relationships and my experiences, my knowledge will. And so for me, my success is kind of based on all of that and how I measure that success in my life.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there along that same path, and I've had this conversation with several different people at different times where they keep going, well, why don't you go get a better house? Why do I need a better house? It's got 4 walls, a pretty solid roof, a pretty cheap payment where it's, I can go through and I can take off for a week to go down and play in Knott's Berry Farm and then go sit at a beach for a couple of days.
Right.
I mean, it's not about the money or trying to show that I have it, but it's trying to be able to spend time with my kids, quality time with my kids.
Yeah.
Because that's something that no matter what, I mean, like it was saying in the article by Christensen, is that you got to be able to find what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember reading a couple different places where it said there's no tombstone ever that says I wish I spent more time at the office. I mean, granted, a lot of that's mostly joking, but it's a very true statement. Is everyone wants to get home to their family at the end of the day. They don't want to sit there and wait. They don't want to sit there and do more work.
Right.
They want to get out to their relationships.
Well, the thing, I think the thing is like everyone should feel that way, but that's definitely not the case all the time. There are quite a few people that are not in that boat.
Yeah. Some people really do care more about like their status in their career and their how much money they're making and all these things. So
yeah, I was just talking. I was over there at my kids were doing a sport right now just a few minutes ago, and I was hanging out outside with some of the parents, and I talked to one guy, and he was telling me that that the reason that he doesn't do more, because it's a gym, and the reason he's not training right now is because he's like, sometimes I'll miss a job if I'm training, or sometimes I can't. Because I have work and I have to turn it away because of this. And he was saying like life shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't turn away work. And that's what he was telling me. And I'm not going to contradict the guy, but
right.
I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, if you can't do the things that you enjoy doing, I don't know. You get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Like, I'm assuming, and if I'm
slave to work,
I'm assuming wrong, I'm sorry, but I'm assuming both of you are LDS or at least familiar with the LDS community, and I think we're
that's
less,
a very safe assumption within.
I don't know.
BYU.
I've had people who aren't, so I wanted to clarify.
I know. It's just.
I think that lens is very helpful for us, and not all people who are LDS do think that way. They still think maybe more about money and success in that way, but I think the lens that we're given with our culture helps to kind of clarify that for us.
I think it's a skewed lens that some people have, where they think if they have that really nice house, the really nice boat, the really nice toy hauler with all the toys that can sit there in the garage and collect dust while they're at work, trying to be able to pay them off so they could spend more time with their family. I think that's where it's at. That's where the skewed lens is ultimately everyone wants to spend that time with their family, but they don't know how to adjust their resources to be able to do that.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I like that point. Yeah, there is a lot of that stuff, but there's a lot of selfish people out there too.
Absolutely.
And there's also
Yes.
like my brother-in-law. Well, he's my ex-brother-in-law because my sister-in-law divorced him. But he worked all the time, and he felt like, look, as long as I'm working, I'm fulfilling my obligations as the head of the house. But he wouldn't spend any time with his kids. He didn't, he wasn't a great husband. And when he wasn't working, he would sit around and not do anything. And he's like, look, I don't have work right now. He was a contractor. Right. He made pretty good money, but the idea behind the whole thing was like he felt like in his mind, he felt like his lens said, as long as I'm working and providing for this family,
then I'm doing what I need to. Yep.
I'm doing everything I need to do, and everything else is outside of what I need to do. And well, it caused a divorce, but yeah. I think he wasn't able to see the perspective that no, like work should just be a part of what makes up, there's the work life, the spiritual life, there's everything, like all these things, your kids, like you can't just give that responsibility to your wife. That's part of your responsibility too.
Yeah.
Anyway, so like different people have different lenses, but I think that going through these courses, it's been a real benefit in my life to like, because the church tries to keep you grounded. Like, remember, like when you're a millionaire one day because of the success that you've gotten through BYU, that to remember that none of that really matters. What matters is are you a good person? Are you making other people's lives better?
Exactly. Yeah. I agree. Amen.
So,
and on that note,
yeah,
I think we've covered right about everything.
Yeah, awesome. I think that was a really great conversation, you guys. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's just who's in charge next week? Is that
it would be Andy next week.
Okay, so Andy's got the lead next week, and cool. We're almost through this, guys.
We have like 5 more weeks.
We've only got a month left till the end of the class.
Woo woo.
Yeah. Well, I feel like once you hit week 10, there's 3 weeks left because week 14 is
the final.
Is whatever. Yeah, that's true.
There's really nothing to do. And this week if we've already read it, we're pretty much done with this week, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Like with this class meeting, that fulfills all the requirements for this week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're at week 10 basically. So we got 3 weeks left.
We got this, guys.
So
all right.
So it's going to be next week will be Andy and then followed by me, right?
Yes.
So I will have week 11.
Yes.
Okay. Which I know we skip a week in there, don't we?
Do we?
We do. It might be week 11. Let's see. Or I think we skip week 12 actually.
I'll take week 12.
No, I go dibs.
Oh my gosh, no. Because whoever skips it gets the next week.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah,
Way to be a killjoy.
I know, I'm sorry. Everyone gets to do it twice, it sounds like.
I was with the original calendar though. It was nice because
the original one you only had to do it once.
Yeah, Oliver screwed me.
All right, hold on. Let me go back to stop the broadcast now.